You are now listening to the Yeshua community. In this reflection, I want to look at a simple idea. The doctrines of Paul are unnecessary. This isn't meant to attack anyone's faith, but to clear up a confusion that was never part of Yeshua's own message. Paul builds a system in which humanity is trapped in sin and needs a substitutionary sacrifice. But this idea does not exist in Judaism. In the Tanakh, the Old Testament in Christian tradition, God forgives when people repent and turn away from wrongdoing. No blood sacrifice is required, no legal mechanism, no metaphysical transaction. It is moral and direct. Do what is right, stop doing what is wrong, and you are considered righteous. Paul's solution simply does not address a problem that exists in the scriptures Yeshua knew. A key part of this is Paul's interpretation of Genesis. Paul reads the story of Adam and Eve as the origin of universal guilt, the moment when sin entered the world and corrupted all humanity. But this is not a Jewish reading at all. In Judaism, Adam and Eve do not fall into a state of inherited sin. They disobey, they face consequences, but their mistake is not transmitted to every generation. There is no doctrine of original sin in the Tanakh, and there never has been in mainstream Judaism. Humanity is not born guilty. Each person is responsible for their own actions. As the prophet Ezekiel says clearly, the soul that sins shall die, the son shall not bear the guilt of the father. Paul's solution depends on a problem that Judaism simply doesn't teach, the idea that all humans are doomed because of Adam. If the problem does not exist, the solution is not needed. Yeshua's message confirms this. He teaches forgiveness, mercy, compassion, justice, and loving one's enemies. He never says that his purpose is to die for anyone's sins. His teachings describe how to live, not how to enter a metaphysical system of salvation created around Adam's supposed fall. When he speaks about taking up one's cross, he refers to moral courage, not substitutionary atonement. Paul's theology is operating in a different world, built on a reading of Genesis that Yeshua, as a Jewish teacher, never hints at. The Jewish understanding of the Messiah makes this even clearer. In Judaism, the Messiah is a leader who brings justice, restoration, and peace, not a sacrificial figure. No prophet says that the Messiah will die for the sins of others. Paul's interpretation of the Messiah's role is rooted in his own framework, not in the tradition Yeshua belonged to. Judaism also had a simpler and more inclusive solution long before Paul. Even before the later Noahide system was formalized, Jews understood that non-Jews could be righteous without becoming Jewish. What mattered was living decently and turning away from evil. The people of Nineveh in the book of Jonah make this point perfectly. Rabbis later systematized the idea, but they didn't invent it. It was always there. Paul's debate with the law is unnecessary, because his own tradition already had a way for everyone, Jew and non-Jew, to stand before God without a sacrificial death and without the concept of inherited guilt. Paul is also often unclear when he talks about the law. He rarely distinguishes between the commandments of the Torah and later human traditions. The rabbis were much clearer. Non-Jews are not supposed to live as Jews. They have their own ethical obligations. That resolves the entire conflict that Paul makes so central. So what does this mean for faith today? It means you don't need Paul's theological system to understand Yeshua. You don't need the idea of original sin because it never existed in Judaism. You don't need a sacrificial death to escape Adam's guilt because Adam's guilt is not inherited. You can go directly to Yeshua's message: forgiveness, compassion, justice, and living according to God's will. That is enough. The conclusion is simple. Paul introduced a solution for a problem that never existed in the tradition of Yeshua. If God already forgives those who return to him, then no sacrifice is required. And if Yeshua already shows the way through his teachings, then Paul's doctrines built on a non-Jewish reading of Genesis are unnecessary. This doesn't erase Paul's historical influence, but it means his theology is not required to understand God, the Tanakh, or Yeshua himself. Thank you for listening to this reflection from the Yeshua community. If it spoke to you, feel free to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Peace and blessings to you.